I read a story recently about a single mother who had two young children. And this woman's son noticed the nail polish on both his sister and mother's hands and decided that he wanted to participate in that fun. So according to the story, once his nails were painted, he waved them around, giggling with happiness. But his delight was cut short when he began to get bullied at school. His mother, who was part of a Unitarian Universalist congregation, must have mentioned these events to someone there because word got out to the men in the church. The following Sunday, men of all ages showed up at the church with painted fingernails. Teenagers, business types, old men. Some even brought bottles of polish so that the men who hadn't heard the news yet could paint their fingernails too. That little boy's face, when he saw that, his mouth an O of wonder. His eyes lit up with joy. I consider this an example of mothering. Erich Fromm has a famous quotation that you'll often see on cards and memes around Mother's Day, and it says this: "Mother's love is peace. It need not be acquired. It need not be deserved." That is the essence of universalism. And I believe that there is a deep spiritual connection between mothering and universalism. What is universalism? Well, beyond being a part of our name, Unitarian Universalism used to be two separate faith traditions before they merged in 1961. Thomas Starr King summarizes the denominations this way: Universalists believe that God is too good to damn people, and Unitarians believe that people are too good to be damned. Universalism is more than rejecting an idea of eternal damnation. It is understanding that when a child is born, they are not born sinful. It means that we are whole and worthy, and we do not need to be baptized to erase any sin. We are not inherently flawed and in need of repentance. I am an unapologetic, radical universalist. And I am also a mother. So I understand that tradition is not just what we inherit from the past. It is also what we create and pass to the future. Borrowing words from the feminist Jewish author Marcia Falk, tradition necessarily implies process, the continual forging of links on an unending chain. We inherited universalism as part of our tradition, but our onus is to forge more links in that unending chain. It is not enough for me to trust that there is no hell in an afterlife. I am concerned with the hell we make on earth. Now, the Unitarian portion of our faith reflects a belief that the divine, whatever that is not a trinity of primarily masculine figures. Yeah. Instead, we tend to think of it as a capital U unity. Falk claims that even if God is a singularity, everyone must still be reflected within that divinity. But we're not. Western religion seems intent on portraying divinity as white and male, steeped and entangled in patriarchy, racism, and misogyny. The fact is, gender is a social construct. It is an arbitrary designation of particular traits assigned to people based on their biological sex. It is reductive. And it's reductive to claim that all men are stoic, strong, independent, assertive, or competitive, or that they don't wear nail polish. And equally ridiculous to assign women as sensitive, gentle, passive, modest, and my personal favorite, emotional. Every single one of these traits is a human trait. Gender is not a binary. We exist along a beautiful spectrum that may or may not be associated with the biological sex with which we were born. And this is important to understand because religion, even our religion, has been predominantly patriarchal. And as we know, patriarchy is an oppressive system that hurts everyone, guys, gals, non-binary pals. If we continue to center religion on arbitrary masculine traits like rationalism, competitiveness, and independence, what happens? Hosea Ballou believed that if people imagine a divisive and punishing God whose desire for justice is satisfied by the crucifixion of his own son, they will model themselves after this God and feel justified in being cruel themselves. Contrast that with feminist theologian Ryan Eisler's description of reality as the great cosmic womb. She suggests that if the central religious symbol is not a man dying on a cross, but a woman giving birth, then love of life and not fear of death could lead us from competitive ways to partnership ways. Perhaps we could even shift our focus past the idea of individual salvation and towards what Burns and Parker claim, that salvation is not something one possesses individually. It is something one participates in communally. So, how do we shift the narrative? How do we use our universalist faith to untangle from these dominant religious landscapes based on punishment and hierarchies of power and individualism? Well, I suggest we start with matriarchy. According to the book Matriarchal Societies, Studies on Indigenous Cultures Across the Globe, matriarchies are not just a reversal of patriarchy, with women ruling over men, as the usual misinterpretation would have it. Matriarchies are mother-centered societies based on maternal values, caretaking, and nurturing, which holds for everybody, people of all genders. So in matriarchies, mothering is no longer a singular biological responsibility. Instead, it is transformed into a cultural model. In matriarchal cultures, variation is understood as natural and is accepted as such. Differences serve to create complementary functioning, where individual characteristics are not seen as representative of an entire gender, but are used to collaborate together using every person's strength. More precisely, matriarchies are societies that take great care to provide balance. And this holds true for men as well. In matriarchies, one does not have to be a biological mother or even a parent in order to be mothering. Instead, it is a concept of mothering that calls upon all people, no matter how they identify, to paint your nails in solidarity. Because matriarchal structures center on kinship. Enrique Salmon, in his research on indigenous perceptions of the human-nature relationship, calls for all of us to live kin-centrically, treating everything around you, all the natural elements of the ecosystem, as kin, as family. What if more of us, drawing on the wisdom of indigenous matriarchal societies, rejected any omnipotent male god and instead saw divinity as immanent? Can we imagine the universe as a great goddess who birthed everything? It might surprise you to know that scientists are doing exactly this. The Gaia theory proposes that living organisms interact with their inorganic surroundings on Earth to form a synergetic, self-regulating, complex system to maintain and perpetuate ideal conditions for life. This complex and symbiotic system is nurtured by Mother Earth and thrives when life thrives and suffers when life suffers. Carrying the raw materials of life, sharing in both thriving and suffering, and seeking ideal conditions for all things. That's mothering. I believe we are called to mother ourselves, each other, and nature. I reject patriarchal structures that overemphasize competition, hierarchies, and rationality as somehow more valuable traits than those associated with the feminine. Structures of scarcity, competition, hoarding power, hierarchies, and rationality, remember, only women are emotional. These things cannot ever help us come close to comprehending the mystery of being alive and having to die. Gloria Anzaldúa identifies this as the fear of the supernatural, both of the undivine, the animal impulses such as sexuality, the unconscious, the unknown, the alien, and the divine, the superhuman, the goddess in us. I believe mothering is the path forward, the new link in the chain. Let's reconnect to a feminine divine and indigenous models of matriarchy. Let's lean into caregiving and nurturing as spiritual essentials for everyone, and not women's work that within a patriarchal system has no value. But I'll admit, it still bothers me, the continued use of a terminology that upholds that false binary of gender. Perhaps if we had a term that captured birth-based theology's focus on abundant cycles and the love of life, a term that could convey the communal nature of salvation and could capture the ways we could live kin-centrically, holding all things in nurturing ways. a word that is not based on gender, but captures the embodiment and mystery of the divine. I've got it. Let's call it universalism.